In the headlines of the CBC NewsNight, picking cotton should be a bit more financially rewarding this year. Higher sugar yields are being predicted. Millions in loans provided to support entrepreneurs last year. And in sports, the Barbados Netball Association seeking international expertise to help boost all levels of.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC NewsNight, starting now.
Good evening and welcome to the CBC NewsNight. I'm Wendy Bark. Barbadians planning to pick cotton this year will get a bit more for their efforts. That's the word tonight from Chief Executive Officer of the Exclusive Cottons of the Caribbean Incorporated, Adlai Stevenson. He could not say by how much as yet because meetings are still taking place. His disclosure as he appeals for support from government and private farmers to assist if the cotton industry is to flourish. Trevor Thorpe reports.
The variety of cotton produced in Barbados is of the highest quality. In fact, silent cotton is known by the industry specialists across the globe. And the appeal from CEO of Exclusive Cottons of the Caribbean Incorporated, Adlai Stevenson, is for all stakeholders to make an input so the industry can grow.
We really want the private farmers to come back on board. We want government to lend some support to the industry. And that way we can get back to the point where we should be. Western Union Sea Island cotton is a very good quality cotton. It's known by the connoisseurs of cotton throughout the world. And we need the support of the government and we need the support of the private farmers to get back to the point where we should be in terms of producing finished goods.
With the right assistance, about 200 acres could be put into production.
We are in discussions now, so we anticipate very shortly to announce an increase in the price, an increase in the quantity that the harvesters can get when they get into the field. But we certainly need the support of government and the support of the private farmers.
The cotton official is not totally happy with the way things have been going in the industry and says harvesters will be introduced for this year's crop. He says training for operators as well as equipment maintenance are occupying their attention.
It's a portable machine, it's handheld, it's battery powered, so it needs to be charged overnight after a continuous use of maybe 6 hours in the field.
Mr. Stevenson says they are hopeful that the meetings with government and the private farmers will bear fruit, and he is maintaining a positive attitude for a better harvest this year. Trevor Thorpe, CBC News.
Higher yields are projected this year from the island's sugar harvest. That's according to Chairman of the Barbados Sugar Industry Limited, Mark Seeley. He believes sugarcane production could increase by 30% from last year's 66,000 tons to 86,000 tons this year. Mr. Seeley revealed that this estimate is contingent on the intended increase of acres for sugar harvesting.
Estimates for 86,042 tons for this year, so it's a significant increase actually. It's about a 30% increase on last year. Last year was 66,000 tons. Bearing in mind this year we've increased the acreage quite a bit, so it's going to be 4,405 acres producing the 86 or so thousand tons. So it's looking like a good year. Of course, these are estimates, so there's a lot of things that go into making sure that we do deliver at least our estimates.
Noting that farmers and sugar workers are ready to work, Mr. Seeley highlights the importance of commencing the harvesting season mid-February, as he says around that time weather conditions would be most favorable.
We're going to need a fairly good drying out period, probably from mid-January right through to hopefully February 15th, where we expect to start. So far, the farmers that I have called, their harvesters will be ready to start for February 15th. And as I have said over the last few months, it's imperative that we start around that time, of course, given weather and the drying out period, because any later than your plant canes will be start to rotten, and that will be very, very bad for the sugar content.
Another staple in the local agricultural setup is carded to get underway on the 24th of next month. And the man at the center of the planning, CEO of the Barbados Agricultural Society, James Paul, says Agra Fest 2023 has to be a part of a wider campaign for Barbadians to appreciate the benefits of eating food grown right here at home.
We want to have projects emanating or coming out of our Agra Fest that will have a greater economic impact in terms of assisting to further the government's goals as far as trying to improve production overall within the agricultural sector. But certainly one of the things that we have people doing agriculture is trying to do what they're doing better.
Mr. Paul tells CBC News that online ticket sales will be ramped up and greater efforts will be made to include agricultural service providers in this year's exhibition. He adds that activities planned for Agra Fest 2023 include the introduction of the Boer goat to the show and to the island.
A lot of those persons who are going to come to Agra Fest and seeing the Boer goat for the first time will be fascinated by the animal. It is actually reared for meat because a lot of the goats in Barbados are actually reared for milk. But this one is for the meat, and I'm sure that a lot of Barbadians when they see it, they will be fascinated by it. And that is, of course, in the means of sort of trying to promote Boer rearing. It is not something that we find in Barbados usually, but it's something certainly that we will be pushing.
The exhibition will be held at Queen's Park. Barbadians must come together to create the unified solution to the gun violence playing out in the country and confront the threat by avoiding reprisals. Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who was speaking in a New Year message, pointed out that if people would let matters rest and control themselves, that would be part of the solution.
There is no gainsaying that the issue of violence, and in particular gun violence, has to be confronted by all of us as a nation. And it is to that we have continued to speak. We've put resources behind being able to do more trials at a quicker rate, being able to give the police and law enforcement that which they need to keep the country safe. But you and I both know also that we need, at the level of our families and communities, to ensure that we can do what we have to do. Because guns don't talk and guns don't walk. It is people who do, who use guns. And to that extent, if we start by eliminating violence from our language, violence from our communities, and one thing that we need to do is to help each other to understand how not to respond in a reprisal.
Prime Minister Mottley says there's still a lot to be done to boost emerging and existing economic sectors. However, she cautions against looking only at the macroeconomic picture. The Prime Minister says they are still on the mission to ensure that as many citizens as possible are enfranchised. However, everyone has a role to play.
Whether in the labor movement, whether in the private sector, whether in civil society, or whether as individual players, as workers or investors or employers, as government, as public servants. And this is because collectively our efforts will make the difference to our being able to add 2023 as another year of growth to what we have been able to achieve in 2022. That's not always easy. You know it and I know it. And there are some issues that we can do better, and there are some conversations that we have to have at the granular level in order to see how we can help each other to do better.
And joining us live to now examine just how to de-escalate and be non-confrontational in terms of methodologies to work among our young people is a couple and family therapist and social worker, Jomo Phillips. Good evening to you, Mr. Phillips.
Hi, good evening, Wendy, and Happy New Year to Barbados.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well. Let's look at this whole issue of de-escalation. Where does it start?
I appreciate PM Motley's comments, but I do think that we need to think about violence, and violence very often is amongst young people, as a systemic issue. I mean, as a relational therapist, I think about the fact that there are usually a variety of causes of violence, and to address violence, we need to have a variety of different stakeholders involved in the process.
Okay, so when we speak stakeholders, are we speaking just family, church, school? Who needs to come together to create this solution?
Good question. Just some of those same parties that you mentioned, but I also think particularly, and this is what the research tells us, when we involve young people in terms of consulting with them, also in terms of developing programming and involving them in terms of leadership, then we also can get a much better handle in terms of youth violence.
You spoke to involving them in programming. There are a number of programs already created for at-risk youth, but sometimes you only find a few joining in, and those are the ones who maybe perhaps a parent or a mentor that they admire would take them and they get involved. How are we to reach the others?
Certainly sort of going to where young people are at and just sort of meeting them where they're at as well too. Also involving young people in terms of recruiting other young people as well with regards to programming. I think very often there's a disconnection between authority figures, and when we're talking about youth violence, one of the authority figures very often is police and law enforcement, and there's sometimes this mistrust between young people and those authority figures. This is why it's so important to involve young people in terms of sort of joining up and encouraging other young people to get involved in programs.
If you were to create a model to de-escalate, where would you start and what would be the first thing we look to target?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one, sort of making sure that people have opportunities for pro-social behaviors, so they learn things like compassion and empathy, and that we also address the issue of inequality in terms of this particular community. We have too many young people who are falling through the cracks with regards to education and opportunities in terms of the job market.
Okay, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening, Mr. Phillips.
Okay, thanks, Wendy.
Okay. Coming up, a 19-year-old UWI student makes a pitch to international investors and comes up a big winner. New strains of COVID-19 will always emerge. That's the response of Director of the Center for Biosecurity Studies at the UWI, Dr. Kirk Douglas, in relation to China having so many variants and the United States now coping with a new Omicron variant themselves. Speaking on CBC's Morning Report, if testing is to be reintroduced at ports of entry, he says the categories should be expanded.
I think at the ports of entry, what they've been doing in some countries is what they deem necessary. Whether or not that will stem the flow of cases coming in, that remains another question. But there are different strategies that you can employ. You can employ testing persons, or you could actually test wastewater. For example, in some countries, what they're doing is also testing wastewater from off of aircraft and also from cruise ships as well, because you don't get a personal indicator of who has the infection, but the intent of testing is really to collect data and information of what are the current strains that are present.
Dr. Douglas adds the vaccines will continue to have a key role in the fight against the virus, even as updated versions are released.
The vaccines will always be present. The update of the vaccine is also going to be necessary. Like I mentioned, now that COVID is transitioning into the endemic phase, and when you look at the example of influenza, every single year, the reason why they have to update the vaccine is because the influenza virus changes. And it changes because that's the inherent nature of a virus. And when you have the beginning of a new pathogen entering the human population, what you will get initially is very high mortality rates and also quick spread, because no one has immunity towards this virus. And this virus is also adapting to being circulating in humans. So over time, gradually, what you will find occurring is that virus will get less and less pathogenic.
The Firehood Angels pitch has a winner. 19-year-old Jasmine Green came out on top of the competition at Hilton today with $25,000 to enhance her online school. The Angels, who are from North America, were facilitated by Invest Barbados in their search for female talent in the technology sphere. Christopher Wood and I were there for the big announcement, which left the UWI student very emotional about her win.
The $25,000 goes to Private Caribbean Study, Jasmine Green. Congratulations, Jasmine.
This was the result after some 15 entrepreneurs with technology-based solutions made their pitches to Firehood Angels for the chance to win that prize money. The final three were Jasmine Green, Zoe Hunt, and Simone Passmore. But it was the UWI technology student who runs Private Caribbean Study Goals, PCSG, which is an online school started in 2020 as a solution to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal for quality education. Jasmine, who was making her first in-person pitch, told CBC News that it's all about student-led education.
Our teachers are students. So how we do it is that we volunteer students to peer mentorship, to tutor other students around the Caribbean. We currently target Caribbean secondary schools, so CXC students from the third form all the way up to the last form and sixth form. However, we are looking to expand to the university level now, in the Caribbean, that is, so UE level.
She says they have been seeing great results in the development of the students who use the service. The funds will be used to expand the business, given that it has been self-funded with assistance from her parents and relatives. And the Angels were extremely impressed with Barbados. In tonight's business report, millions of dollars loaned out to support entrepreneurs and create more job opportunities in the Barbados economy in 2022. That's the word from Chairman of Fund Access, David Simpson.
For 2022, Fund Access would have disbursed $2.9 million in loans. These loans would have been a combination of new loans as well as refinancing of loans, and the loans would have been advanced to 32 clients. And these loans would have enabled those clients to create 63 new job opportunities in the economy.
Mr. Simpson admitted that the COVID pandemic impacted persons' ability to repay their loans, adding that the delinquency rate skyrocketed.
Many businesses were either closed temporarily, some ended up closing permanently because they couldn't sustain the longer the COVID pandemic and the health protocols continued. So we probably got as high as potentially 40 or 50% because there was that level of uncertainty. I must admit that it affected certain sectors more. So retail, tourism, entertainment sectors were significantly impacted because those businesses were essentially not operating.
However, as of December 2022, the statistics show that many businesses are recovering. He says that's as a result of the business sector fully reopening and the removal of COVID-19 restrictions.
So I think the recovery in terms of persons' ability to pay their loans has returned, and that's what the statistics show at the end of December. We actually surpassed the $3 million mark in terms of collections for 2022, which is a significant improvement compared to where we were naturally in 2020 and 2021. About mid-year, I think we had returned to our average collections on a monthly basis. And when I say collections, I'm not necessarily speaking about delinquent loans only, but just people paying their loans. And that figure had gone back up to in excess of $300,000 a month.
A cooking wine will soon be added to the roll at Shalana's Natural Wines at the Lower Estate, St. George. Renowned to be one of the oldest of the locally made wines, sales manager Simone Trotman told the business report, if it's a local fruit, chances are they'll make a wine from it.
We actually have a cooking wine coming out, which is made from Scotch bonnet peppers. We also have an orange wine also.
The wine official gave a breakdown of the flavors already on the list.
We have pumpkin, spinach, aloe, sugarcane. Once it's local, we will have it. Akis, five fingers, sorrel, plantain, a lot.
That's our newscast. Good night.
Thanks for visiting us. To get more stories like this one, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.